So you're rolling through logical reasoning, you're hitting your stride, predicting conclusions, eliminating traps, and everything feels under control. Then a parallel reasoning questions appears. It's a full page stimulus. You scroll and it keeps going. You scroll again and it still keeps going. And you're thinking to yourself, why are all five answers basically essays? You reread the first sentence 3 times and somehow you understand less each time that you read, and your eyes start to glaze over, you start to panic, and that is parallel reasoning. And it's not just hard, it's kind of like a time vampire where it's draining your minutes, your focus, and your confidence. But here is the truth no one tells you. These questions aren't hard because they're complicated, they're hard because they look complicated. And once you strip away the story and you look at the skeleton underneath, they become predictable and almost boringly mechanical. Now, the reason that they're so hard is because they have two weapons they're using against you. They have length and they have abstraction. The length, the sheer number of words, makes you anxious, and the abstraction makes you second guess yourself. You see sentences like, the committee that fails to enforce regulations undermines its own authority, and you think to yourself, I know what these words mean individually, but together I have no idea. And that is not your fault. The LSAT writers know that your working memory can only hold about 7 ideas at once simultaneously, and so they write arguments with 8 ideas. The trick is not to read faster, the trick is to read structurally. I want you to forget what the argument's about and instead focus on how the author moves from the premises to the conclusion. And that is all you need. Now, when you hit a parallel reasoning question, do not read the answers first. They are traps. First, you find the conclusion. Ask yourself, what is the author trying to prove? You want to look for signal words like therefore, thus, it follows that, hence, and so. Sometimes it's subtle. This suggests that, or we can infer that. When you see those words or phrases, mark them mentally and also note the tone. Is it certain? Is it probable? Or is it a recommendation? That tone will become your filter later. Then step 2, find the premises. Ask, what reasons does the author give? Are they facts, rules, statistics, examples, analogies, whatever they are? Circle them mentally. Every conclusion is riding on those. Then step 3, you label the reasoning. Is it conditional, like an if-then? Is it causal, like because X, therefore Y? Or is it comparative, or is it quantitative based, like all, most, or some? Then step 4, you check the validity. Does the conclusion truly follow from those premises? Or is there a hidden jump? Is there an assumption, a correlation error, or a new term? If it's airtight, it's valid. If there's a leap, it's flawed. That's it. Now let's get practical, because everyone watching this right now falls somewhere in these 3 stages. If you are a beginner, if you're new to the LSAT, your only job is to ID the conclusion and its support. Ignore everything else. Say in your own words, they're claiming X because of Y. If you can do that 10 times in a row, you've built the foundation that most people skip. If you are at an intermediate level, then you add the reasoning type and the tone. For example, this is a causal argument with a strong conclusion. And you want to start noticing whether the premises guarantee or suggest. You want to label the strength of the conclusion. Is it must, is it probably, or is it should? Then if you are more of an advanced test taker, this is where you abstract the logic and you have the potential, the option to label everything in formulas. You translate, like if X then Y, X therefore Y, or most X's are Y's, Z is X, therefore probably Y. And you will start recognizing these kinds of templates across the entire test. Once you can name them, the LSAT stops being a reading test and it starts being a pattern recognition test. Now, there are 2 types of parallel questions, standard parallel reasoning, and then there's parallel flaw. In parallel reasoning, the original argument is typically valid or at least fairly reasonable. I say typically, not always, not 100% of the time, but most of the time. And your job is to find another argument that is the same way, has the same underlying structure. If it's parallel flaw, they are explicitly telling you that the original argument is broken. And so your job is to find another argument that breaks in the exact same way. So if the argument jumps from all A's are B's to some B's are A's, that's somewhat of a reversal. And your answer must reverse in the same way, not just talking about similar topics. So as a quick test, you can ask, could this conclusion logically follow? If yes, you match. If no, then you're matching flaws. Now, parallel reasoning questions are a bit of an endurance challenge, but I don't want you to let them kill your rhythm. As a general benchmark, 2 minutes max on your initial pass. If you hit one early that looks like a novel, just flag it, skip it, come back later. Now, when you do attempt it, first, read the stimulus carefully. Spend your first 40 seconds just building a blueprint of the structure, understanding the underlying skeleton. Then you scan the conclusions in the answer choices first. If there's a mismatch in tone, you knock it out. Then you check the reasoning type. If the argument is conditional, but the answer is causal, you knock it out. Then you also check validity. If the argument is flawed, but the answer is valid reasoning, you knock it out. So you could hypothetically eliminate the 4 wrong answers in less than a minute, just looking at the tone, the reasoning, and validity by themselves. Then you confirm the 1 remaining answer. And if you're still unsure after 2 minutes, again, guess, flag, move on, come back later. You don't want to let 1 question cost you 3 others. Now, there are a number of limited traps the LSAT writers use again and again. The first is the topic match trap, where the stimulus and the choices contain the same topic, the same subject, but topic doesn't matter. Only the logic matters. The second trap is a reasoning mismatch, where let's say the stimulus is conditional, the answer is causal. If the conclusion tone is the same, but there's a different logic, it's wrong. Then you have a validity mismatch trap, where let's say the argument is flawed, but the answer is valid, or vice versa. You knock it out because the validity did not match. Finally, you have a language reuse trap, where they copy phrases from the argument into the choice, but the structure is not the same. So again, if the skeleton does not match, it is wrong, no matter how familiar the words feel. Now, most LSAT students practice wrong. They'll do 10 questions, check the answer, and move on. But you've got to look at structure, validity, and the traps during your review process. So as you're reviewing, you map out the structure of the argument. You ask yourself, was the reasoning valid or was it flawed? Then you look for the trap that you might have fallen for. You could, for example, as a test, as an exercise, do a rebuild drill where you create your own argument using the same structure. So for example, let's say that you had a stimulus where they said all red cars are fast, blue cars are slow, purple must be medium speed. The flaw there would be a false compromise. Your own parallel for that could be something like all cold drinks are cheap, hot drinks are expensive, warm drinks must be mid-priced. Same logic, again, a flaw, of course, different topic. That's how you teach yourself the pattern of the argument. So another example, let's say we had an argument saying all employees who meet deadlines get promoted. John meets deadlines, therefore John gets promoted. Conditional reasoning. If X then Y, X happened, therefore Y happens. Now, totally different topic. All plants that get sunlight grow. This plant gets sunlight, therefore it grows. Different subject, but same structure. That is a correct parallel reasoning match. Now, a flawed version would say most plants that get sunlight grow. This plant gets sunlight, therefore it grows. All became most, not logically equivalent. That's what you want to be on the lookout for. Now, why does this matter so much? Because parallel reasoning mirrors what you do in law school. In law school, they're not asking you to memorize facts. They are asking you to compare reasoning. Who argued what precedent applies? Does this new case, this new situation or new scenario, does it match the logic of the old one? That is all parallel reasoning is. It is matching precedents. Every time you strip away the surface and look for the structure, you are training the exact muscle that lawyers use in legal writing. Phrases like by analogy or similarly situated parties. Now let's zoom out because this is not about memorizing, it's about precision. And so when you hit one of these on test day, don't panic. Just say to yourself, conclusion, premises, reasoning, valid or flawed. That is it. You're reading for the logic, for the structure, for the skeleton, and they do not care about the topic. If you can train yourself to see the structure, parallel reasoning becomes free, easy points.